that button.
Greetings, humans. Welcome to the Week 8 Bob and Emil show here at footballdiehards.com. Week 8, you know what that is, Emil? That's the halfway point of the season, right?
Pretty close to halfway. Beautiful.
I am Bob Harris, the senior editor here at Football Diehards. He is Emil Cadlick, the publisher and honcho of the entire site, the entire operation, including the magazines, which we've done for many, many years, the Pro Forecast, the Cheat Sheet, the Diehards, the Draft Book. All kinds of stuff, but it's the season and we've got the website going, got a little video content. I just want, this season has been pretty fantastic. The Thursday night games have been, for the most part, more fantastic than usual. Last night was no exception. Deshaun Watson throwing the 5 touchdowns. Sad news, Will Fuller injuring his ACL, done for the year. But DeAndre Hopkins, man, what can't that guy catch?
Yeah.
We even saw Devontae Parker show flashes of being Devontae Parker. We saw Danny Amendola. Just in general this season, the NFL so far, and we'll throw out last night's game, the Thursday night game. We're recording this Friday if you're tuning in late. The NFL set a record through 7 weeks. 5,146 total points. That's a lot of points. That is a record through that point in the year. 581 total touchdowns, records. 374 passing touchdowns, the most of any season through 7 weeks. And starting week 8 off, with a 5-touchdown extravaganza by Deshaun Watson. Do you feel like, Emil, that the Texans have won 5 straight? They're running the ball well. Lamar Miller, second straight 100-yard game. Maybe the weapons are getting depleted. Will Fuller, maybe that'll make a big difference. They were without Kiki QT, though. Maybe he steps up and fills that void similarly. I don't know that he's quite got the speed, the straight ahead downfield speed, but he's got plenty and he's a playmaker. Do you feel like the Texans have rounded the corner, after the slow start? Maybe Deshaun Watson's going to start paying off for the fantasy owners who drafted him. Often it's like the second quarterback off the board.
Yeah, I don't care who you play. You win 5 games in a row, you're doing something right. It's going to hurt with Fuller out, and, of course, Kiki is going to get some opportunities, and maybe there's somebody else that'll help out. I think they'll find a way that Jordan Thomas, who the heck is Jordan Thomas, that tight end?
Jordan Akins was the tight end that kind of was more on the radar, the higher draft pick. I think you're going to have those kind of flashes from guys in this offense, especially when the injuries happen. Vincent Smith is also on that roster at wide receiver, Sammy Coates. They're going to try out Bryce Butler, who we've seen is a pretty good deep threat. I mean, capable. He doesn't get a lot of opportunities, or didn't in Dallas and didn't his last stop, Arizona. Dallas Cowboys on the bye this week, working with Amari Cooper.
Obviously, if Kiki's available in your leagues, you should probably get him on your roster. It's probably a little late now, but if he's there, he's a good guy to pick up now. Mm-hmm. He's going to get opportunities, and maybe
exactly.
like one of those other guys will.
We're going to talk about some guys like that tonight. We thought since we were at the halfway point of the season, we kind of go position by position and take a look and see at some of the players who have surprised us, both for the better and worse. And I guess if we started at quarterback, no one's been more surprising, Emil Cadlick, than Patrick Mahomes.
Yeah, what?
Or it's really a surprise. I mean, we kind of had the hope. Right?
You know what? This is a really fascinating perspective, and it doesn't always happen this way. In the preseason, we had him. Some people had him down 13, 14, 15. I had him around 9 or 10. Literally, you could take him as your second quarterback, which I tried to do a lot. But, and your hope was he'd be a top 5 or 6 quarterback. Number 1, to this point, you can't predict that. You can predict it, but realistically you can't. But so much fun to watch, and of course if you were fortunate enough to draft him, you're just riding it, and it's just fantastic. He's averaging 31.9 fantasy points a week, averaging.
Right, and that's, look, for the guys who drafted Deshaun Watson, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady up at the, maybe a little earlier than you normally would. This is maybe a lesson the guys can emerge. And we're seeing, another player who's, I think, has been a surprise is Mitchell Trubisky, although, again, the NFL being a copycat league, you look at the previous year, Sean McVay goes into Los Angeles, takes over that team that was moribund with with Jeff Fisher in charge, and Jared Goff was horrible. Todd Gurley calling it a grade school offense. You bring in an offensive mind, he turns everything around, turns the quarterback around, the second-year quarterback at the time, Jared Goff. And so there's the Bears, and they have a rookie quarterback that kind of struggled under an older school coach in John Fox, right? I mean, comparable to Jeff Fisher. They bring in Matt Nagy, who had worked for Andy Reid for quite some time. And Andy Reid, it turns out, knows something about quarterbacks, according to Pat Mahomes' play this year. So we have a situation where Matt Nagy comes in there. And so if you were connecting all those dots and you took a flyer on Mitchell Trubisky, it's kind of paying off right about now. How do you feel about Trubisky? Do you feel like he's reached a point where there's enough consistency where you can trust him as a weekly starter?
Yeah, I think you still want to be, depending on who's on your roster, you may be able to stream. But I think so. I still think the guy's got a lot of growth. I still think he's not really, I think he can be better just kind of watching his mistakes. But again, 28 average fantasy points. It's funny how we perceive when we watch and he has big gains, but then when you look at the data, and he's right now, on average, minus the bye weeks, the number 2 quarterback this year. He's like, what? Number 2 quarterback this year? 28.0 fantasy points? Yeah, I guess you can trust the guy. I have a home league where I have a bye, and I have Rivers and nobody, and I picked the guy up. He was available in the home league. It's kind of a short roster, but he shouldn't have been available. But, yeah, I think you can trust this guy right now.
Right, and I think one of the things that both he and Patrick Mahomes bring you, and kind of is a good thing, is that mobility, that rushing ability. We saw it on full display last week against New England with Trubisky. We've seen it plenty with Pat Mahomes as well. These guys are, I think when you look at those average points, it's pretty impressive. Matt Ryan's up there with them, but there's not a lot of guys that are putting up the kind of weekly scoring. Go ahead.
I don't know if you're going. I don't know how you sorted on this list, but Jameis Winston, of course, missed 3 games. He's at 27.9.
Right.
He's the 4th, average, and he only played 3 games. But that's pretty darn good again, of a guy that really wasn't expected to be in the top 5.
Right. I am looking at average points per week, and I think it'd be if we're talking about guys that maybe surprise us. And here's the thing about guys that are surprising us. And we can talk about this a little bit is, you may be in a league where you drafted, whether it was a Matthew Stafford, Phillip Rivers, some of those guys, maybe you got them after you got an Andrew Luck, right? Andrew Luck has turned back into Andrew Luck. Is that safe to say for you?
Boy, yeah, I'm considering the concerns about his arm, that one game where he didn't throw at halftime.
Right.
They brought the backup in. Oh, man, I've always liked the guy. You always like his guts. I mean, even now, he's scores touchdowns. He's running around rah, and he's got the leadership. And obviously, he only threw, I forget how many, he only got 200-plus yards last week, but he got like 4 touchdowns. Right. So he still had fantasy points. Yeah,
you've been very patient. Love him this week. But you may have some tough decisions because maybe you drafted him. And maybe, he was going late enough. You could have got a really good quarterback ahead of him, or a higher.
He could be your number 2. He could be your number 2 quarterback right now.
And Pat Mahomes definitely was your number 2 quarterback.
Yeah.
Mitchell Trubisky, definitely your number 2 quarterback. So now you have some hard weekly decisions. We're at the point of the season, right? 8 weeks in, where you divorce the name from the numbers, right? You're not playing the name anymore. You're playing the numbers.
I totally agree. Those are good things. Those are good problems. You love to have good problems, and those are good problems to have when you're trying to figure out who to start. And those guys are your second quarterback.
Like you might have Drew Brees and Pat Mahomes easily. That's not an unusual thing. And I think when you're at that point, and Brees is coming on a little bit. I think when you're at that point, you're probably, if you have a Pat Mahomes or you're pretty successful, you're probably winning some games, right? When your quarterback's averaging that much more than the other quarterbacks. And so you have some room to maybe make a trade, work some trades, and do some things. It's hard to trade quarterbacks, generally speaking. And maybe you don't get full value for them, but do you really need it? If you just have a piece of the puzzle that's missing from what you think is a championship run, don't be afraid to give up those Phillip Rivers, those the guys you drafted to be maybe your number one, but who can't make it in there, right?
But another thing, you look at home and away. Goff right now is fantastic at home, and he's kind of average on the road. So, if you've got the two guys, you may be able to play. Hopefully you got a guy at home and you can flip him out. Of course, it's kind of hard to not have Goff in there, the way he's throwing some huge games in there.
So let's just talk about, positive surprises are pretty easy. Mahomes, I think Matt Ryan, I think we can call him a pleasant, positive surprise.
Yes,
Andrew Luck. I think Kirk Cousins is playing about what Kirk Cousins we would expect from Kirk Cousins.
Yep, he's right in there.
Right, and Aaron Rodgers has been a disappointment only because he's missed time with injury.
Mm-hmm.
I think we could say that. So some of the guys who have been really, really disappointing, though, and I don't know if you were, what you were counting on, and maybe we shouldn't be disappointed, but, Russell Wilson. I mean, I guess we have to be, he seems to be coming on, but the overall production from a guy who's been, top 3 for how long now?
Yeah, it's he's a magic man in the past, and he's done a lot in the fourth quarter in the last couple of years to really boost his numbers, but so far that's just not happened. He's the 20th ranked. And, he's a top 5 guy. So he definitely is disappointing. I don't know what, it's just what it is. That team's down. And I guess we just got a little too excited about it. Of course, it's hindsight's 20/20.
I do think that offense is coming around, and I think we'll see better from him going forward. But they're a run-first offense now, right? I mean, that's the way it goes. I think the other guy who's maybe less I don't know if he's a disappointment. You tell me. Alex Smith. Coming off a huge year for the Chiefs, who moved on from him. Again, this is a reminder when teams make these decisions about personnel and you think, well, they're crazy. Why would an NFL team give up a quarterback who took them to the playoffs? It's probably because they realize they have another one that can play pretty well. But in Washington, Smith just hasn't been that impressive, right?
No, he hadn't. Obviously, they don't have the talent. Duh. And you kind of were hoping this guy would be a really nice, reliable QB2. Right now he's 29th in average points per week. That's pretty low. You were kind of hoping. Now maybe he's had a couple big games. I'm not looking at all the games, but definitely a disappointment. And he's had some ugly-looking games, but he's also doesn't have the talent, although it's similar to what Kirk Cousins had for the last few years. But Chris Thompson hasn't been productive, been hurt, and he, other than week 1, we had a fantastic game. He hasn't been helping. It's just not working yet. Hopefully it will the second half of the season.
Yeah, we'll talk about some of those weapons, especially at the tight end position here in a few minutes. So let's look at running backs in general. I mean, I think, I thought it was surprising. If you look overall at the top 10, it looks a lot like what we drafted. Todd Gurley, Saquon Barkley, Kareem Hunt, Melvin Gordon, Alvin Kamara's up there, Ezekiel Elliott's in the top 10. David Johnson's a little low, but still, the overall volume is kind of helping him, get by. But I would say he's a disappointment for the most part. But the surprise is in that upper echelon. James White. James Conner. I mean, look, the fact that Le'Veon Bell is not in that group that we're talking about is obvious. The reasons are obvious. I mean, no one saw the holdout coming because everyone told us it wasn't coming. And by everyone, I mean Le'Veon Bell told us he was going to report week 1. It's pretty hard to, go against that and assume the worst. We're still at a situation where I don't know what his strategy is. I don't know what he's trying to accomplish with this. He seems to be.
Well, he's got to come back in week 11, right? If he wants to be able to be a free agent? ?
Yeah, well, I think they'd let him go anyway. At this point, I don't even know that it matters. But yes, regulation-wise, he needs to get his year of free agency. But I mean, right now he's a free agent. He's not signed anything, hasn't signed his franchise tag. So I mean, he's it's just a player in limbo who's throwing away $850,000 a week.
But the point is, James Conner and I took him a lot late in August and early September, and that's panned out big time. I've got a league where I got so many running backs, I haven't even played him hardly, but that's beside the point. Would you have expected him to be the top 5 running back at this point in the season, even if you knew he was starting? He has really taken advantage of this situation.
Right, and I think it tells us of the transitory nature of running back talent. It's something that our experience has told us for how long, though. I mean, you know, if you've been playing long enough, you remember guys like Nick Goings, Reuben Drones, Zach Stacy, not that long ago, Steve Slayton, Dominic Davis. More recent examples of this would be in Baltimore just in the last few years, Justin Forsett, and last year, Alex Collins. I mean, running backs can come out of nowhere. I think it's interesting that it's about opportunity, right?
It's about opportunity, but another thing, and we always talk about preseason, how hard it is to really decipher in preseason something great and something not so great. But when I watched James Conner in preseason just break tackles like they were little puppies, you know, he was just pushing them away. I know it was preseason, but you could see in there, I said, this guy has progressed in 1 year. He's come from a full season as a rookie getting experience, and I felt that's why I drafted him a lot. If Bell held out, I really thought this guy was going to produce. And that's, you know, you still have to have the talent. You still have to put the work in and prepare, and I think James Conner's done that.
I would agree with that. And so let's look at some guys are disappointments for injuries. We're going to throw out the Leonard Fournettes of the world. I mean, we're kind of throwing out the Le'Veon Bell. It's not an injury, but it's just an absence ongoing. There are some guys that have, I think one of the biggest surprises to me this year, and it probably caught a lot of people by surprise, is the lack of rookie rising at running back. And I mean by that, the guys we expected. Rashad Penny goes in the first round of Seattle. Can't crack the lineup hardly behind Chris Carson and Mike Davis at this point. He got some carries last week. Ronald Jones, been a disaster in Tampa Bay. Royce Freeman, struggling with the undrafted compadre, who, he's a top 15 running back right now.
He's
almost in top 10, 13th overall right now.
Yeah, it depends on the PPR or not. He's obviously a fantastic starter for people, even as an RB2. You know, he's getting PPR points. You know, he's stunningly doing well.
Yeah, and we'll see what he does this week against the Chiefs all by himself without Royce Freeman. Royce Freeman won't play this week. But some other guys too. Matt Breida, a guy that we knew about, but maybe because of an injury, he rose up and he's turned into quite effective. He can't stay healthy. That's been an issue for him. So, but I think of all the rookies, the one who has been the best until an injury, maybe was a big surprise too. Who knew Sony Michel would be the guy that untied the Gordian knot that is the Patriots backfield? Granted, James White is still very productive, but Michel looks like he's the real deal, right?
Oh yeah, he's got all the talents. Obviously he's a rookie, and I've seen him do a few things that weren't perfect, but they're giving him the opportunities, both pass catching and running, and he's racked up some serious points. And I cried when he got hurt the other day, and I assume he's probably going to miss this week, or I don't know if I can even start him this week.
He may miss a few weeks, but we have seen now what the plan is. There's a clear-cut plan in the Patriots backfield, and we've seen this. You know, again, I'm old enough to remember guys like Antoine Smith, Corey Dillon when he came over. I mean, they've had guys at times that they've used as kind of a featured role with a satellite back. James White, in the circle, Tom Brady's circle of trust. That helps him out quite a bit, and I don't think his role diminishes because Sony Michel's came on. I think that was a great thing. I think anyone who's been like your biggest disappointment at the position of guys that are playing.
Well, there's a lot of them. Dalvin Cook is high. It's an injury situation, but still, you were expecting him to come out. Leonard Fournette. I mean, you can't be. We speculate because we don't know, but. Got a hamstring this long, it just I don't understand it because I'm a couch doctor.
Can I quote Dalvin Cook?
Yes.
Hamstrings are tricky.
Yeah.
Turns out, who knew?
There's a handful. I'll whip through a few here. Duke Johnson, the number 11 PPR running back last year, is a ghost. And
even surprising.
Yeah, even with the trade of Hyde, I'm thinking, okay, this guy's going to get something. Nothing. He got nothing. Yeah. Right now, he's like, I don't even know what to do with this guy other than cut him. Of course, pardon?
Can't play him.
Yeah, can't play him.
That's the one thing you can't do with him.
Yeah, and of course, this Derrick Henry's been a disappointment. Maybe because I was hoping for a little more than this, and he hasn't done anything. Chris Thompson to me has been a disappointment. I realize some of it's an injury, but that guy was extremely productive the last 2 years. He was almost like a wide receiver 2 for that team. And
yeah, I think of the guys you've just gone through. Derrick Henry, to me, look, I thought I was a little more lean to Deion Lewis. I own more Deion Lewis. I think he's been disappointing too. That offense has been disappointing.
Yeah, it's a whole
where they
problem.
brought in a new offensive mind. I think they're going to be heading in the right direction in time, but Marcus Mariota has not been all that impressive. Corey Davis has struggled as a result, but Derrick Henry, I think he's as disappointed as the rest of us. So at least we got that going for us. That he's as upset as we
and
are.
Jordan Howard also is a mild disappointment.
That was going to be, I was going to throw him out right next because I think that to me has been, it's been a huge disappointment. I've been a Howard believer. I expected more from him. I think Alex Collins, compared to my expectations, has been a disappointment.
Yeah.
Not dealing with injuries with Buck Allen instead coming in. I think that's been a bit of a disappointment. Kenyon Drake as well. I think, the usage has been inexplicable. We're starting to see, though, the last couple of weeks, the big playability that drew our interest in the first place. So he may be someone we can count on down the stretch. But I think of the non-disappointments, Todd Gurley, Melvin Gordon. I mean, those guys have been rock solid. Kareem Hunt's been better than I expected. We do the magazines. We always have to identify first-round busts.
Wow, what a monster that last game. Skipping that, getting away from that guy, and then 3 steps, and he jumps over that guy. The guy is just a monster right now.
Well, to be fair, we didn't know the Bengals were allergic to tackling. So
yeah, that's true.
I would have factored that in had
now,
I known.
Isaiah Crowell, who's done well, but now with Powell out, is this guy going to get more touches?
All my best ball shares of him, and I have many double digits without a doubt.
Now
so.
Another guy,
Marshawn Lynch were some of my big best ball buys because they were so cheap.
This Crowell could be a guy who really does well the second. Not that he's done well; he's had some big games, but
right.
And now that Trenton Cannon guy, who I liked in preseason, he catches the ball. He played a little, after Powell went out. He only ran the ball 2 times for 4 yards, but he did get 5 targets, 4 catches for 69 yards, 17.3. That guy could help you in a flex, perhaps. I mean, he's a guy you want to get on your roster if you got room, just to see what happens.
I would grab him as a speculative play. I would also be wary of Elijah McGuire, though.
When's he coming back?
Away. Oh, he's a week away. So Cannon might have a shelf life. Talk to Rich Cimini from ESPN, the Jets reporter there. Talked to him tonight and asked him that very question and said, what should we do? His concerns with Cannon, are kind of shared, or something I share. It's just a lack of high-end competitive experience, right?
Yeah.
Came from a smaller school, undrafted, but very fast. Has all the speed, and that's something you can't coach. But McGuire's a week away, and Cimini thinks that once he's back, he'll jump into that spot. But look, get one of them on your roster.
Get one of them.
If someone's only got McGuire, that doesn't mean he's going to be back next week. He's coming off IR. Got to work.
I bet in a lot of leagues, I could flip to the site. We've got that. We've got some data on the site to show how many leagues he's in. I bet he's not in a lot of leagues, except the high stakes leagues.
Give me any other names you have of guys you think will help us down the stretch that maybe.
Well, an interesting one just to pop into that. We've got till Tuesday to the trade. If DeMarcus Thomas gets traded from Denver, Sutton could be huge. Thomas. Yeah, whatever I said, Demaryius Thomas. Sorry, and that Cortland Sutton. If that happens, he's going to get opportunities. He's starting to look better. He's starting to look more comfortable. Obviously, he's got monster talent. And what a quirky thing that happened this last week, and it's happened a little bit. The tight end for Detroit, Michael Roberts.
Mm-hmm.
Is this guy for real? Because if he is, he's getting touches in the goal line. And
Jordan Thomas for real. I mean,
that's he's. If you look at his data, he's really, really hot and cold. But but then again, you got to look at him. And this Chris Herndon for the Jets, this tight end, he's actually been productive for 2 weeks in a row. And that's a fluky position.
We have a situation there, especially this week. You've got Robbie Anderson listed as doubtful; he won't play. Quincy Enunwa already ruled out. So you kind of got a dearth of talent. They'll have Rashard Matthews, who made his first introduction to Sam Darnold on Wednesday after he got signed in there. So it'll be Jermaine Kearse, Rashard Matthews, Jerome Peake. I mean, kind of a group of under-the-radar guys, and Herndon. So I'm kind of with you this week, and maybe that's something to watch going forward. The Jets not known for having a great bunch of guys at tight end.
Well, you know,
Yeah,
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Quincy Newman will be back in a week or two.
Okay,
Curse is a guy that we expected to have a big game last week, but did not.
I mean, he went from 9 catches to 0. That's the frustration of fantasy football, right?
Right. Well, let's move on to the wide receivers and kind of look at some of the overall surprises and disappointments. I think when we look at the top of the ranks, Adam Thielen, Tyreek Hill, Emmanuel Sanders. Did anyone expect those guys to be top? Robert Woods, firmly ensconced in the top 10, ahead of the likes of Antonio Brown, Michael Thomas, Julio Jones. My guy, John Brown, I'm taking credit for him. Up there in the top 15, ahead of Mike Evans, ahead of a number of guys that you probably
and Cooper Kupp. Cooper Kupp missed a game or two. He was up there before he got hurt. Yeah, stunning. It's similar to the quarterbacks, and those top 4 quarterbacks right now on average weren't really in the top 10, except maybe not even Matt Ryan. So yeah, this is stunning. I mean, I knew Emmanuel Edwards. We had a feel that maybe he was going to do better this year, but man, I mean, he's way up there.
The thing about Sanders is, I mean, last year he was so beat up. He had the ankle issue, though I think it was over the course of 6 games. I don't know that he was ever at full speed. Clearly he is now. But Adam Thielen, I think there's something about him that gives him an advantage, a built-in advantage that other big receivers don't have. He plays the slot so much.
Yeah. And
he doesn't, it's hard for the top shadow guys to shadow him. I mean, the shutdown corners,
it's a good point.
They generally don't work the slot. And so he's a big slot, and that works to his advantage. Obviously, look, he's a very good player. He catches the ball well. He runs great routes. He's big. He's physical. So there's that. Tyreek Hill, though, I was maybe a Tyreek Hill skeptic heading into the season. I have shares of him. I thought he was going a little bit high. Maybe
he was going high. I mean, he was going high, and of course, you're trying to count the numbers. You got Sammy Watkins coming there, and you got a great tight end, and But you didn't expect the quarterback to throw for 31 fantasy points a game, so that's helped him. And I don't think it's changing. That level, they've actually increased the productivity of the offense, which allows all those guys to be high fantasy players.
Right, and I think the thing about Hill and it's a stupid cliche, but I use it all the time. There's 2 things you can't coach: size and speed. Hill has more of half of that than anybody on the field when he's playing. You could say the same for John Brown. I mean, John Brown is going to be the fastest guy in the field, and you'll see that at times when he's running routes. He doesn't necessarily run the greatest routes, but he runs past people. Tyreek Hill runs past people. There's something to say for these smaller speed receivers, says Antonio Brown.
That was funny last week when they were playing New England and they were down with like 3 minutes left, and they threw that bomb and he scored. And I'm just saying, you scored too early. They scored in one play, and then they lost the game at the end of the game.
I think
what can you do?
Thing that we're seeing, you can't. I mean, you don't give Tom Brady that much time, that's for sure. The thing that we're seeing, though, is some of these receivers, and I think Antonio Brown was the one who kind of set this tone and maybe changed the paradigm. Gave us a different way of looking at this. We had a kind of a prototypical wide receiver 1 in our heads, right? A big body guy, Calvin Johnson, the big, the Des Bryants, that big 6'4", 230-pound guy. Well, I have often maintained that physics of the game don't work in the favor of those guys. When you're just that big and you're moving that fast, the laws of physics, torque, mass, acceleration, force, it's not good for you. Des Bryant, you can see every time he skied for a ball and fell on his ass, it hurt. He's 230 pounds, man.
Also, it's harder for you to flinch away from people. The things like Bell and Antonio Brown is they can move out of the way. Remember the greatest show on turf? Right. Those guys would do a slant route and lay down. And what are you laying down for? Well, they were protecting their bodies, and guess what? They won a Super Bowl, and they were very productive. Extremely productive.
So we're seeing some great success from some of these guys like that. Who have been your disappointments at wide receiver?
Let's take a look here. A few of these are kind of being a little bit picky. Keenan Allen, actually, he's turned into Julio Jones and can't get in the end zone. That's a mild thing. I mean, but then again, he's pretty low down to like a wide receiver 3 right now. Jarvis Landry has had like 2 or 3 fantastic games and then just some dud games, which dropped him down right around Keenan Allen, a wide receiver 3. You were drafting him as at least a wide receiver 2. Allen Robinson's another guy who, he was coming back from injury, but we kind of expected him to do a little bit better. Right now he's 50th. And Corey Davis,
out to me, that one.
Corey
Davis as well.
Corey Davis had one huge game and dud. I don't know how you start him right now unless you start to see some consistency. And of course, Amari Cooper.
Right, Amari Cooper. But I don't know. I guess I'm a Cooper truther. I don't believe in him, so I never had that problem. I think for me, Larry Fitzgerald, 3 300-yard seasons, can't catch a cold right now. Not his fault. Not blaming him. And maybe we'll see. Maybe Byron Leftwich sat around and soaked up enough Bruce Arians aura to turn David Johnson and Larry Fitzgerald both back into something, even with a rookie quarterback.
You want to watch that, because if this guy really is hurt also enough, and you got all those situations you said, all of a sudden he could become a productive receiver. So keep your eye on that guy.
Turn him around, right? Exactly. If you get him turned around, he's a guy that maybe people have given up in leagues. Maybe he can be a second half of the season savior. I would say Doug Baldwin up to this point has been a huge disappointment, partly because of injury, but partly, upon return, not a lot of work. Now it's starting to come on. I think the Seahawks offense is coming together. I think a lot of guys in this offense, in the passing attack, and by a lot of guys, I mean Lockett, I mean Doug Baldwin, I mean Russell Wilson, guys that maybe were given up on, I think they're going to come back and be great plays down the stretch run of the season for you.
Yeah.
So don't give up on them. Another guy who I think has been a big disappointment, at least to me, but maybe has, I don't know if he has a chance to turn it around or not. Lost him here.
Chris Hogan.
That was the guy, exactly. So we
didn't script that, by the way.
That we didn't, and I was staring right at him. Here's the thing about Hogan, and I had no shares of him, and the reason why is he was going. Where was he being drafted? Emo, was he going in a top 5 rounds, 6 rounds in drafts?
Yeah, he was going around 30 to 35. Right in that area.
People about a guy with a career high of 41 catches. And that was with Buffalo. I don't know that he'd broken 40. I'm going to look right now just to verify. I don't know that he'd broken 40 as a Patriot. So I was like, I've been a disbeliever. I don't think he's going to turn around. I think Josh Gordon is the real deal there. And prior to that, his biggest season is 38 catches as a Patriot.
Yeah, and you got Edelman back, and he's healthy and he's playing, and Josh Gordon just keeps getting better and better. And you're right.
I think circle of trust.
Hogan did have 6 catches for 60 some odd yards, which is a decent 12-point PPR day. Right. But man, if you have a chance to trade him, I'd trade him.
Right, he's kind of, and I don't think you're getting value back for him. He's fallen down below James White. He's fallen down below Julian Edelman, down below Josh Gordon as an option, and down there with Gronk. And we'll talk about Gronk as we get into our disappointments.
One other thing, we did mention Amari Cooper going to Dallas, etc.
Right.
A guy who he's probably on rosters now, but Michael Gallup may actually get help from that, because if they start double teaming Amari Cooper, this guy's starting to play pretty well as a rookie.
Yeah, I don't think there's so little going on there in the passing attack. I don't have high hopes for Cooper, but he is a talented player who, when he catches the ball, can be very good. He just doesn't do that all the time, and that's part of the job description, is catching all the balls. So I'm hoping he comes around. Look, he is a talented player, and we'll see how that goes. I think the situation that leaves in Oakland is Jordy Nelson. Is there someone there? Is Jordy Nelson a guy? Is Martavis Bryant a guy?
I can't rely on Bryant. I guess Bryant's probably going to get some opportunities, but I think that Jordy Nelson's kind of your savvy player, kind of a little bit like Adam Thielen, not as good. Obviously, he's a little older, but I would suspect that Jordy is going to get some more targets, and I think he can take advantage of those. But you'd think somebody else, maybe they're going to continue to go to Jared Cook some more. He's kind of fallen off. Maybe he comes back up a little bit.
Right. I think one guy that kind of, we should all have an eye on is Kenny Golladay. The target percentage, he's between Tate and Marvin Jones, who has kind of been a disappointment no matter where you drafted him almost. I mean, if you were drafted him probably higher than his value that he's currently delivering, because Kenny Golladay is coming in number 2 in targets there, and I think that's going to continue, and he's doing a little something with them. I think Stephon Diggs is doing about what we expected. Just Adam Thielen's doing so much more that it seems like Diggs is maybe a disappointment. But I think you're right. The guys that I think that stand out at this group is Keenan Allen. I mean, I think people drafted him very highly, and maybe he can come on down the stretch. Phillip Rivers playing extremely well. I want to go back to running back real quick because I need to, everyone who reads the Work on Football Diehards, listens to me on Sirius, listens to the pods and this show, knows I'm not a huge Adrian Peterson believer. He's getting the job done, right? And, the thing I want to play is opportunities. I don't know if there's a back in a better position, to get the solid opportunities as long as he holds up. So just wanted to touch on him, and we'll move to the tight ends now. I think it's safe to say no one's been a bigger disappointment. He's still in the top 10, but it's Rob Gronkowski, right?
Yep, number 1 on the list of disappointments.
And we could follow that up with Jordan Reed. He had bones removed from his toe, people, so he could be healthy and play better. Put the bones back.
Yeah,
there's something going on here.
Yeah, they're not throwing the ball to him. I don't know whether he's not open because it's hard to tell, but yeah, definitely a disappointment, and not sure if it's going to change much. But maybe it will.
The odd thing with that is, Alex Smith is known to have an affinity for the tight end, and that dates back to a guy he's playing with now again in Vernon Davis. They're just not throwing the ball that much, whether it's by design or whether it's because Adrian Peterson's getting all the footballs. I don't know, but I think on the positive surprises, there are a hand. And it's tight end. I guess you would expect it. Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz, guys that the other 2 guys you were drafting early, along with Gronk, if you're drafting a tight end early, have delivered in spades. The guy who nobody saw coming on this one, and I know he got paid, Eric Ebron. Where the hell did that come from?
I don't know, and I actually have him in a league. And
is it because Jack Doyle got hurt?
It's got to help.
Opportunity's going to come anyway.
Well, the problem and I was in one high stakes leagues where we got him, and my co-manager, she's an extremely good high stakes player. She believed because they were weak at wide receiver that both the tight ends were going to get a fair amount of targets. So I think he was going to get him anyway, but. With Doyle out so long, he had one monster game and a lot of good games, and so he's still missed stuff. He's still not the greatest tight end in the world. I mean, he still makes mistakes and drops balls. But wow, he's the number 3 tight end right now, 10.2 points per game, pretty damn good.
Yeah, and another guy I think that we have seen flashes from over the course of time, but they've been limited, and we'll find out if he's going to be that same guy as Jared Cook. I hold out hope for him, and he's had a couple of really big games and then a series of, had a couple of solid games in between. He's turned kind of back into Jared Cook the last couple of weeks. I just wonder if this is not a game plan dependent guy along with Jalen Richard, the shorter passing attack games for Oakland. How do you feel about Cook going forward? Is he someone that you trust to start every week at this point?
Yeah, man, I tell you. I think so, but obviously if you're in a good position and have a better tight end, but I think you got to play him for a little bit longer here. With Cooper gone, maybe there's be a few more targets. They've been targeting him. He's had a pretty high ceiling in some of these games, and of course his history says he's going to fall apart, but they don't have a lot of talent there, so I still think they're going to give him the touches that is going to keep him up there fairly high.
Our guy, Justin Lanero, you hear him on the podcast with me, and you read his Digging in the Crates column every week, is a big believer. He calls the tight end the sea of mediocrity. I agree with that. It is, and I don't know if it's mediocrity. It's just that there's such a narrow band of high-end talent right now. It's basically 2 guys. But, look, George Kittle and Ebron are there. George Kittle has been consistently good, and it hasn't mattered that Jimmy Garoppolo's gone. I think for me, George Kittle is a tight end that I would play every week from here on out if I had him without fail. Locked-in starter, right?
Yeah, he's really played well. And like you said, with the loss of the quarterback, he's still doing pretty well. And you probably got him pretty low in the draft. People liked him, but he was going, fairly late in the draft, and definitely helping you out.
Easily outproducing guys like Jimmy Graham, Kyle Rudolph that we drafted higher than that. Let's ask you a couple guys that you think and see if you think they will be helpful down the stretch. Trey Burton.
Yeah, Trey Burton, I think they're coming along. That first couple games, he was hardly getting targets. This team is developing, which you want to see. You want to see a team stay healthy. And I think the connection with Trubisky and him are getting better and better. He had a monster game last week, it was, or whenever. So that kind of skews his value a little. You don't dislike huge games, but you kind of have to look at the other games. I think, right now he's rated like 4, and you and I were drafting him around 9 or 10 is where you could get him.
Yeah.
And God, maybe this guy could be a top 5 tight end, he's one of your success stories in the sea of mediocrity. Yes. And as if you got him in that 9th or 10th, and now he's a good tight end 1, top level. And again, as you talked about this sea of mediocrity, that's why you see a lot of people taking Gronk and Kelsey and Ertz in the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round. You're going, why are they taking Ertz in the 4th round? Well, now you know why. Because that the 4th round's not that bad for the production he's getting, and he's going to be consistent. PPR wise, it's fantastic. And
a couple other guys that I think may be worthwhile down the stretch. David Njoku, touchdowns the last couple games. We'll see if he can do that against Pittsburgh as well. Austin Hooper seems to be getting heavier volume. OJ Howard and Cameron Brate with Jameis Winston back both seem to be viable plays. Vance McDonald is a guy that looks pretty damn good, and it doesn't make it impossible to play Jesse James either. And one last one that I want to get your opinion on. We've mentioned Chris Herndon already and Michael Roberts, some of these, spike guys, I would call them.
Yeah.
But maybe a guy like CJ Uzama. Your thoughts on him in Cincinnati with Tyler Eifert out, Tyler Croft hurt now? Yeah,
obviously he's I don't have his numbers in front of my head, but he's definitely going to get the targets. He's the best guy there. What's the status of Croft? Is it going to be a while?
Croft is out, and maybe a little while. It sounds like a broken bone in the foot. Look, I think the point totals the last couple of weeks, 11 and 9, and
that's good. That's good.
Have been solid. The targets are what I'm more interested in. He's had a 7-target game. For the most part, the targets have been a little lower, but he's made the maximum out of them. If he gets 2 targets, he gets 2 catches. If he gets 4 targets, he gets 3 catches. So
he's definitely a good play, and you've got him. You picked him up as a free agent. If you were smart at that time, he's probably gone now. So you're right. He's definitely a guy that can help your team.
All right. Well, I think we've run through all the positions, talked about some of the disappointments, some of the great successes, some guys that maybe can help you down the stretch. Want to remind everyone to hit the footballdiehards.com website all the time. Got our podcast up, me and Justin doing the Football Diehards, Armando and Bobby Gomes doing the Talk podcast. We've got the live videos with Bobby and Armando. We're doing Thursday night. We do one every Sunday. Make sure you check that out. Jen Ryan's DFS season-long Vegas cheat sheet every week. An Excel file that I can't live without. Keep it open on my desktop constantly. You have values, pricing, Vegas lines, touches, targets, snap counts, everything you need. Tons of DFS content from Armando, John Law, Bobby Gomes, JJ Buck, David Hunter, Evan Tarciano chimes in with his crystal ball. We've got the free agent stuff early in the week. Don't miss out on that with Armando and Matthew Sharon. So tons of stuff going on. Also hit the DFS lineup optimizer every week. Don't set your lineups without it. Even if you don't use the exact lineups they give you, you get some really interesting ways to build, and also read some of the content there to find out maybe how to adjust and get away. Emil, any last thoughts before we call this one a night?
Well, it's halfway through the season. Some of us are struggling in some of our leagues. Don't give it up. Don't give up. We talked a lot about these fringe players. What did you call them? Guys who have spike players. I think it's a great point. You got to watch these guys. You got to keep your head in it, because one of these guys, there's going to be guys between right now and fantasy playoffs that are going to help your team, and you just have to. You got to have your pole in the water if you want to catch some fish, and there's some fish out there.
Every year, a running back wins somebody a title that nobody drafted, right? I mean, and we're going to be looking for those guys, see if we could identify them in advance and help you figure it out. I keep an eye on some of those rookies that aren't playing now. There's, teams have investments in them. They'd like to see them do well. But we'll be looking at more every single week. Every Friday night we'll be up. And thanks for tuning in, and thanks for visiting the site and being a subscriber. We'll talk to you next week.
Good luck this weekend.